Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anglo Election Insights, where today I'm providing a quick roundup on the Newfoundland and Labrador election on Canada's Atlantic coast. Not a great deal of attention this election got, but it did throw up quite an interesting and surprising result where the Liberal government under the premiership of John Hogan was toppled after over a decade in power, despite some of the polling showing that their government was probably pretty safe. We can see that the PCs managed to flip 5 or 6 seats, and in the end they were able to eke out a very slim majority from only a 1% polling lead over the Liberals. And in fact, this figure here, 44.4, is the lowest vote share, I think, that any party has won a majority in at the provincial level. So a surprise result, and it points to the Tories having a much better vote distribution than perhaps they have in the past. I'm not sure if that necessarily applies to this particular province, but certainly at the federal level, the Tories have suffered from a lot of their vote being basically running up the score in places like rural Alberta or Manitoba or whatever, and then not being as competitive in like the suburban and ex-urban areas of places like Montreal and Toronto. So if we have a quick look at the map, you can see that, the Liberals managed to maintain their vote share in the metro area of St. John's. They ran up the score here. You can see the margins pretty big for some of these Liberal ridings. They were never going to be that competitive. But the Conservatives, on the other hand, they were able to hang on in some of these more suburban ridings. And then if we zoom out a little bit further, we'll see that they managed to exploit a little bit of vote splitting on the left and knocked off some key incumbents here. There's a few examples. Have a look. This one, a very, very close race. I think this one here, where they only won by 18 votes. And as I was watching the results come in, the early results with like the absent votes and that sort of thing, they actually favoured the Liberals, and the Liberals had the lead in the majority of ridings. But then as the election day votes started to roll in and some of the early vote, the ridings began to flip. And you can see here, like some of these margins, 18 votes, 64 votes, 102 votes, and the margin's 0.3%, in and around 1%. So a very tight victory and a very, very tight majority, but a surprising win for the Tories in Atlantic Canada. And it sort of reflects what happened federally, where there was a lot of talk about Foundland, where some of these trade policies and economic policies that were potentially going to have an impact on the fishing industry on the Atlantic coast, or the aquatic industry, perhaps I should say, and that actually drove some good results for the Conservatives at the federal level. Well, that's now been replicated here at the provincial level. The main issue was actually, there's your typical like service delivery issues around crime and healthcare and that sort of thing. But this memorandum of understanding, the MOU, which everyone was talking about in the coverage, was related to Churchill Falls and this kind of like hydroelectric deal that was going to be made between Newfoundland and Quebec. It seemed that the Liberals were quite committed to it, and the PCs wanted to take the deal to a referendum after submitting it through like an independent review process. So I suppose that's going to put that deal on the chopping block potentially, especially with Quebec also looking at a change of government in several months' time. So that deal doesn't look like it's in good shape, and the political fallout seems to be quite significant from it. But essentially, a really a surprise result, and a really strong one for the PCs. Not a whole lot more to say. We'll see how this government goes, and just keep in mind that the next provincial election in Canada, if I'm not wrong, is over in Quebec, which I probably won't provide much coverage of because Quebec politics is really a law unto itself, and you really need to understand some of the cultural and political undercurrents that don't necessarily apply to the rest of Canada or the rest of the Anglosphere. So anyway, just thought I'd let you guys know what happened in this election, and I'll be back with some other videos later this week. I've got one coming about Victoria at the state level, and I'll have another Anglosphere polling update at the end of the week as well. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next video.